thanks for joining us for podcast number 6, Luke on Location, where we have a little discussion about the upcoming weekend's study text, and this one would be Luke chapter 5, the first few verses. We'll tackle the calling of the disciples. We asked Fred Hastings if he wouldn't join us for this little discussion. Fred joined us for our tour early in 2020, January of 2020. Fred.
He also didn't get the email about wearing the
Yeah, I blew it. Sorry, guys.
One of these is just not like the other. Yeah.
That's for your benefit.
But we asked Fred to go along, and Fred worked a lot on our navigation and logistics of the trip, and we didn't get lost too many times.
Just once that I remember.
Good memory. One, and I'll take the blame on the first one because it was the Airbnb location.
We drove back and forth for an hour at like 2 a.m.
Yes,
That was awesome.
Let's not go back there. So we're going to jump into Luke chapter 5, and there's a lot of things I think we want to talk about as we talk about the calling of the disciples in the Sea of Galilee. But I wanted to jump into this particular one by just talking to Fred a little bit about his passion for Israel and what it is that really drives him to want to know more, to go back. How many times have you been, Fred?
I've been 3 times now and missed a couple of chances. And I was talking with Mary Ann yesterday about the next time. I'm hoping to try and go again.
Next time? Who's next time?
I don't know yet.
Any next time. He's going in January again, right?
February.
Yeah.
Now, Fred, are you still thinking about spending a month there? That was the last I heard.
I talked about it with my wife. She never really said, "Yeah, let's do that." But
so, can we say safely today you're going to commit to that?
Can we do that on the podcast?
No, absolutely not.
She's not going to watch this.
She better not. Now, in answer to your question, I try to keep it brief, but I think some of it goes all the way back to my childhood. I had some exposure about Israel when I was a little boy. I had some family members several generations back that were pretty active in ministry, and they had left some books that my parents had. I didn't understand any of it, and I could jump ahead 40 years. Part of my faith journey, part of understanding more about the Bible, what took place there, and actually coming to the point where I was baptized as an older guy. I was baptized in my 40s. Part of that period time, understanding and learning from people about Israel helped me understand the Bible so much better.
Would you at one point describe yourself as cynical to faith or skeptical?
Both words I would describe as being accurate. Always wondering, kind of searching, seeking, but a lot of doubts, a lot of questions. It came to a period of time, and part of that period of time, when I really made the change over a period of about 18 months, was understanding more about Israel. And I can remember succinctly one moment where I was watching a video of a gentleman out of Dallas Theological Seminary named Zola Levitt presenting a case for Paul being at Philippi and in the prison where they think he may have been. That was kind of earth-shattering, but there were many examples like that. It reached the zenith, though, I think, when I was able to go with you the first time in 2015. Kind of sparked more interest. Again, in 18, even more so. When we went in 18, tried to figure out a way to try and bring something back. That's one of the things that left me in 2015. I felt it would be so valuable to bring something back to the people who can't go or won't go, whichever it may be, to help them understand the reality of what is in Israel, that there are real places that you can walk into now. And you all experienced it that went the first time this year. It's very impactful. So we tried to do some videos, and they were a little, so-so. So going back this
year, the content was great.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of hard to shoot on a cell phone.
It really was, and with the crowds of people you meet there, it really is problematic to try and do something with good quality. So I was really elated to go this time with all of you, and did a fantastic job in preparation and actually capturing things to bring back, and that's part of my interest now is to try and bring that back to more people. I think it's very important, especially, I work with kids in the kids ministry a little bit, and I always try when I get the opportunity to press upon them when they're reading their favorite Bible story that you understand this place really exists. You can go there today. You can see some of these things. So
Faith is we can't see God. We can't prove everything. But the thing that Israel does for us is it closes the gap of the known and the unknown. And the more you can see in person, real time, that this is historically real, it's accurate, all of that information, the more of that you can add to your knowledge base, the less difficult I think it is to accept the unseen.
that's for sure. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want to make the statement, you don't have to go to Israel and see that to have a relationship with Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, looking back, I don't think I really needed that to get to have a good relationship with him. But it's so much more valuable now for some of the reasons I've already shared, but also doing a Bible study. I was thinking and driving in today about some of the things that you're going to talk about with this first few verses in chapter 5 is understanding how Jesus and the apostles, the ground they covered, and how they managed to do that. We were in this really nice car. We had a race car driver hauling us around to get us ready to go for all those days nonstop.
Yep.
And we barely scratched the surface
Mm-hmm.
on where Jesus and the apostles went. And it's just amazing to me still that there's so many places in Israel that I want to see. It's not going to add, I think, to my faith. This is going to add to my understanding of God's word.
What I would like to do next for myself is to, I've made the Jesus focused journeys now, and I plan the itineraries for these trips and so forth. So I've gone to places to learn more about where Jesus was and what Jesus did, because I think that's priority. But I'd like to go back and do an Old Testament story study. To go where David and Goliath faced off, to go to Moses and Mount Sinai. I know that's not Israel, but all of that. I think people would, at least myself, would really appreciate to make those stories also.
As Andrew
Come
said,
along.
let's commit to that right now.
Yes. 2021 teaching trip is Old Testament.
So
Oh,
anybody out there want to sponsor
Yeah.
that activity?
I'm in. Let's go. Yeah.
We are more than willing to go and study for you and bring back things to share. In fact, we're going to do that. That's, I think, my next one. I don't know if we'll do that next year, but we're going to do that. We're going to go study on location some Old Testament stories and preach those characters and I can remember standing up on Mount Carmel and Mount Precipice this past time, and our guide Hani pointed out, that's where the tents would have been when, let me get the names right, JL drove the tent peg through the head of. I'm thinking, I want to go stand there. That's pretty sweet. Those kind of things to make those stories come to life. I think we could have a blast doing that. But anyway,
I think that's the thing with all of this is like until you experience it, you don't really understand this. And Blumker, you said this before about how it brought color to your reading. I didn't realize how much that my Bible reading was conceptual. So I believed it. I had the faith, but it took it to a new element, seeing that place. And it moved it from just conceptual, not really being able to visualize it, to adding in a historical element that really brings that to life. And it just, you're right, you don't need it necessarily, but man, it has strengthened my faith and my ability to start to realize that, hey, this is true, this is real. Just to be able to articulate that to people, that's been super valuable.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, we're moving from Nazareth, hometown of Jesus, where we found the story last week, to the Sea of Galilee, where he's going to spend quite a bit of time now, and much of what's recorded in the Gospels will take place. You guys will all probably concur that's one of our favorite places. Everybody that I've taken, Fred compiled a list of how many people I've taken to Israel. What was there? A bunch.
Yeah.
I don't know, 100 plus.
I didn't count them. But
Yeah.
but I would comment in front of everybody while I'm here. I really want to thank you for taking me to Israel And thank you for taking all the people that you've taken with them on their behalf, because I think they've all experienced the same thing that occurred with this group this year. So,
And the resounding theme there is they love the Sea of Galilee.
yes, absolutely.
Just love that region, that little bowl there on the north end. And so we're going to spend probably, I don't know, I haven't looked exactly at the schedule, but several discussions about things that happened right there, which makes sense. That's where Jesus was doing probably as much as anything outside of Jerusalem in the last week of his life. But so we've got the three towns that we're going to be in and around a lot: Chorazin, Bethsaida, and Capernaum. This story is down on the seashore somewhere below Capernaum, down along that area somewhere. We'll talk about that maybe if we get time. But the Sea of Galilee, beautiful place. What stood out to you guys? Why did you like it? Real quickly, share that.
Peacefulness.
Yeah, I mean, that whole area had just a completely different vibe than everywhere else. Like peacefulness, or I don't know. It's just a good place to be.
Just natural.
Water, I mean, it's
Yeah.
peaceful.
Water
I
and
was gonna-
mountains together.
Yeah, it is. It's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a larger metropolitan area.
City boy.
Yeah, and so when I moved here, I was like, "There's no Chick-fil-A here. This is horrible." And when you go to Israel, you see the contrast between Jerusalem being that of a packed city. I mean, people everywhere, to along the Sea of Galilee, and there is this peace, this stillness that is just captivating.
So these places, Chorazin, Bethsaida, and Capernaum, are small towns. I mean, we could see the whole thing when we were visiting each of them. Couldn't have been 200-300 people per place, right?
John MacArthur, I believe, says Capernaum was anywhere from 125 to 150 people.
Yeah, so you've got the creator of the universe, the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, who inhabits the heavens in a town of 125.
Through
And-
chapter 19, right? Roughly.
You trying to catch me up on this?
I'm not trying to catch you. That was a complete guess. And nobody
No
fact
idea.
check.
I have no idea. Those three little towns. So, kind of a cool thing, Andrew. You alluded to possibly the DTI group you're taking next year
Mhm.
is going to actually hike. Are you going to try to
Yeah,
hike?
whenever I told them it was like a 20-mile hike and we had to do it in like 3.5 hours, they balked at that. I don't know why. I thought that was a pretty
One of
doable.
them called me. I talked to him on the phone. I said,
Because you're not Jesus.
I just wouldn't go. Like, I would stay home. You know,
It was probably the 60-pound pack you also required
Well,
as they
yeah,
were doing that.
yeah. I mean,
so.
I just wanted to be legit. They carried their
That's-
tents with them, and
Scratch that from the record. But anyway, that is a possibility
Yeah.
that you can do now. You can
Yeah.
hike those three little towns. So a lot took place there. When we walked up to the Capernaum, the hometown of Jesus sign hanging out there, you go down to the water. Somewhere between there and the place now is called Tagba. The reinstatement of Peter, John chapter 21, took place there. Somewhere along that region, though, it really did take place. There are 7 natural hot springs that come out there in that area that the plankton and such that the fish eat causes that to be a good fishing area. So fishing villages gathered along that north shore. That's where Jesus is found in this story that we're looking at. John, I'm sorry, not John.
here, let me
Could
add
be
something
John.
about Capernaum real quick because I thought this was real interesting, and I actually shared it in the sermon video. But so in Isaiah 9:1, Isaiah prophesies about the one who will bring light to the darkness, and it describes the area that it's going to happen in. And it's interesting, Capernaum is the place that fits all those boxes of where the light is going to shine onto the darkness. And I think it's interesting that the first thing that we see recorded there in Luke 4 is Jesus having authority over a demonic spirit. And it like sets the stage. So, his words have power, right, and authority. And when he does that, it parallels Isaiah 9:1 like perfectly. And I just thought, man, that's crazy. Isaiah is written way, way back.
600 years,
Yeah.
at least.
And so for that to just all line up and it's those things that connect that blow my mind sometimes. I'm like, wow, God is doing some crazy stuff. Capernaum's also a major trade route too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was going to say that's an important part about this. Jesus didn't just go to these 3 small towns. These 3 small towns are in a very strategically located place. I mean, when we find Matthew the tax collector there, he is not there working that area just for those small towns. He's there because that's a major travel route.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's a small town. It's Pocahontas on Route 70.
Yeah.
It's kind of like that.
It's where you pay your fines.
It's where you pay your fines. That'd be Greenville.
Pay your tax. Oh yeah, pay your taxes.
Probably should strike that from the
Capernaum, hometown of Jesus. Pocahontas, hometown of Gretchen Wilson. I see the parallels here. So.
Well, it's the travel route. So,
Yeah, travel route.
and man,
First thing.
we could go through so many things here, but it's not just the travel route of Jews. This is the travel route of the nations. Right there by Bethsaida, just across the Jordan, we're gonna run into Gentile territory. Go up the mountain just to the south. You're in the Decapolis region, you know, the Roman allegiance cities, and so Gentiles, people of the world, all the world, are going to be coming through this little place, and God did that on purpose.
Yes,
He
he
did.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like the pinpoint of the major area of the funnel.
Well, even today, the main road, like, you know, the 2 main roads come down and converge right there
Together.
by Capernaum.
And that is because of valleys and mountains.
Mm-hmm.
Right here in the flatlands of the Midwest, we just built a road wherever we can put a road, but valleys and mountains, rivers, you know, all that played into it. One day Jesus was standing by the lake of Gennesaret.
Also Sea of Galilee.
Sea of Galilee. Got a lot of different names, Tiberias, all those things. The people crowded around him listening to the word of God. He saw at the water's edge 2 boats left there by the fishermen who were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, who becomes Peter, in Matthew 16 story. And we'll do that one, Caesarea Philippi. We'll talk about that later. Belongs to Simon. He asked him to put out a little from the shore. He sat down and taught the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into deep water and let down the nets for a catch." Ben, we pull up to this place. It's sunrise, beautiful morning, right? We are in this parking lot off the side of the road. We walked down to the edge of the Sea of Galilee, and there were some fishermen there. Yeah. Do you remember how they were throwing out their line?
Yeah, there was a guy that would take the baited line and get in his boat and hightail it out to deep water, drop it off, go back.
With every cast.
Every cast.
It's taken out by a guy in a kayak.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the let down into deep water,
So, okay,
I was
so
hoping you were going to tell this story.
yeah, so Ben is shooting his video over on this dock, and it's all fantastic and everything. And there's this guy that comes out, and I can tell he's like,
This is the night before we
Yeah.
shoot this video.
Yes.
oh yeah, yeah,
Because
What-
we got to our Airbnb and we were just hanging out.
yeah. And we're out at the end of this pier thing, and this official looking dude comes up, and I can tell like he's about to run us off.
You
right?
said, "Are you guys shooting a video? I'm gonna go distract him."
Yeah.
And you turned around and went after him.
So I just head right towards him, and he worked there at the like fishing boat museum or whatever there. And I said, "Hey, tell me about like how this deep water thing works." And he said, "Well, actually, like on this side of the sea, it's real shallow, and like 4 or 5
this
feet.
would be the west side at
Yeah.
Tiberias.
Yes,
Mhm.
it's real shallow over here,
3 or 4 miles from.
right? And you know, we're talking just a couple feet." And I said, "Oh, so like whenever Jesus says like throw your nets into deep water, he meant like go out further." And he said, "Actually, if you go out from the shore about 100 yards, there's a shelf and it goes straight down." And he said, "If you think about fishing in general, like you fish shelves." And so the practice was they would fish in the shallows thinking the fish would come up and eat the stuff, but actually the bigger fish would have been sitting right on that shelf, like just. And so
Mhm.
he's like, "Yeah, so Jesus was the best fisherman."
So they do strategy. I wonder, did he have? Never mind.
I don't know if he was trying to sell me something, but I distracted,
You distracted
him long
him, and
enough
that was the goal.
Yes,
to
we
get
recorded the video.
get
So
the
I
video.
remember on a boat ride on the Sea of Galilee, asking the boat captain, who was kind of a cantankerous dude,
He was weird.
to throw out nets for us to show us how the fishing would have happened, because that's kind of cool. Everybody wants to see that kind of thing, right? And he's like, he looks at me and he says, "This is deep water. There will be no fish in the net." But yeah, because it was just purely on way out there. Yeah, the shelf. Interesting. Well, Simon Peter said, "Master, we've worked hard all night and haven't caught anything. But because you say so, I will let down the nets." When he had done so, they caught such a large number of fish that their nets began to break. So they signaled their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so full that they began to sink. Pretty awesome. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at Jesus' knees and said, "Go away from me, Lord. I'm a sinful man." Where does that come from? What is he proclaiming there?
I think pretty much every Jew was looking for the Messiah at that point, whether they really practiced their religion or not. Like, that was just a part of who they were. And so when this miracle happens, and Peter is pretty versed in fishing, it sounds like, from what we know of him, and he sees this as like, there's no explanation for this. This has to be a miracle from God.
Also, I think it was a process because he's just been with his mother-in-law.
See, there's the
Do you know what I
question
mean?
I have.
That's what
on
I
that.
was going to ask, if that's chronological or
Yeah.
not.
I don't think it is.
It is not.
It is not. So
I
it's
think
reversed.
chapter 5 comes before chapter 4 in the story chronology.
Yeah.
Because the synagogue is there. Peter's house is like 100 yards away. And then we've got this story. This seems like, not that it's Peter's first time or Simon's first time hearing Jesus, but it seems like this precedes this.
That
Okay,
moment.
now you who helped me catch a bunch of fish, I know your Lord, my mother-in-law's sick.
Yeah.
Come and help.
Hmm.
I mean,
Yeah, when you look at that, I'm fairly confident in that the calling of, or like this example of the fish and everything precedes chapter 4. So
I mean,
Luke does that, which
Yeah.
Well, I would ask a question.
we don't allow that.
we know you can't
We just
ask
spout
questions.
opinions.
I'll
Yeah.
try and make it easy. So
Get a chronological Bible and let's read this.
I'm
That's
Yeah,
right.
that's-
That was my first clue that this is out
Yeah.
of order. But
Yeah, I know.
jumping out of Luke into John. Am I correct? Is it correct that they met before at John's baptism? That he was one of the apostles that was there. So
Are you talking about Simon?
Simon, yes. So they had some acquaintance, and he probably heard John the Baptist proclaim that that who Jesus was. So maybe he was, like everybody goes through this process of growing acceptance and understanding who Jesus is. Could it have been that was part of the process for him as one of those benchmarks or milestones where he realized that he was real?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I'm asking. So
I know there's a theme all throughout these first chapters of Luke of belonging before they believed.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that.
Can you define that idea?
So Jesus is interacting with them. You're seeing miracles happen in their midst, but he hasn't actually called them to follow him yet.
No, not yet.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
But like they're allowed to be a part of what's going on, and kind of figure this out. Taste, touch, feel. The miracle at the wedding banquet. The water to wine happens in this time. So like they're getting to see and belong and hang out with Jesus before like they're all in. Does that make sense?
Yep. But isn't that makes sense for us too? We can read this like this happened instantaneously. No, they've had exposure to him. They've witnessed miracles. They've seen transformed lives. And we're called to take our next step.
Mm-hmm.
This is a significant. We're about to read a significant step in their life, but it's a next step for them.
Yep.
It's not a gigantic leap from not knowing at all to come follow me.
Yeah.
So
One of the things that I've kind of gravitated towards that I've read this story a lot of times and never really noticed this part, but you think about Peter's profession. So Peter was a fisherman, and all of a sudden, because of Jesus, he has seen enormous profits pile into his boats. I mean, so much that 2 boats are sinking. And I guess I just never realized, like, in that moment, what he walked away from. You know, you're talking a really good payday that he's just experienced, and that could have been enough. And yet he lays all that aside to follow after him. And that's not the main point of this story at all, but it is a piece of it that, hey, all of this profit, all of this whatever monetary financial gain doesn't compare with the calling of Jesus. He's giving you this as a precursor to something greater than that. And I think that's what Jesus calls all of us to, is something greater. Sometimes in the context of what we're doing, but all of a sudden, because of Jesus, our work has greater meaning.
So you look at that, and I think you're on to an important truth, though. His identity was a fisherman. His income was from being a fisherman. You know, his security came from that.
Yep.
So he's got a new identity in Christ, a new source of life. I mean, everything, when we reach this point, changes.
Yep.
By the way, Fred, I just researched your opinion there, and you're correct. John chapter 1, verse 40. Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, was one of the 2 who heard that what John had said to Jesus. So he's there listening to John, and who had followed Jesus. The first thing Andrew did was find his brother Simon, and tell him, "We have found the Messiah." Yeah. So it's a process, which is the case for all of us. That's why we continually say to people, what is your next step of faith?
So out of curiosity, do you know, I don't know the answer to this, how many of the disciples were called and from Capernaum?
Most of them.
11, I believe.
Yeah.
So, I mean, think about
11.
I believe.
Well,
Well,
I gotta verify
let me
that.
rephrase that. I don't know Capernaum, but Sea of Galilee area.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yes.
Sea of Galilee, but I'm talking about that specific town, because you think about, going back to what you said about how
Five at least.
I was going to say at least 5.
I came up with like 3 or 4 in my head just right there. But you think about how there's this, all of these men were taking care of their family. All their income was on the sea. They were taking care of the family business. Think about the sacrifice that was made not only on their part, but the part of their family and the part of their parents. They're leaving it all.
But, okay, absolutely true. But that is like the pinnacle job, though. You know what I'm saying? In Israel, to be chosen by a rabbi, to follow a rabbi.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. So,
but this rabbi is so different. He has nothing. He accumulates nothing. He wanders around and gives everything away and ministers to people. He's so radically upside down in this kingdom approach that he's not your typical, wow, my kid's following Rabbi Jesus. Look what's going to,
But all these guys were past the time where they would have been called by a rabbi.
Mhm.
So this is a later calling.
Yep.
This
Didn't
isn't an 18 years old thing.
You
Right.
told me how old you thought Peter was one time.
Well, Peter would have been the oldest, based upon like paying the temple tax and all that stuff. He would have been obviously the oldest, but no one else is required to pay the temple tax in that story. So 18 was the traditional age where you started paying temple tax. So the likelihood,
And he's married.
and Peter is married, so he's probably in his 20s. My best estimation of what I can read there, Peter's the oldest, probably in his mid 20s, maybe early 30s, but the rest of them are young, like 17, 16,
Which is
17,
radically
18.
different than every picture that's ever been painted of this
Mhm.
story.
Well,
You know,
for
you
sure,
visualize them as 35, 45-year-old guys,
Right.
and that's just not the case.
No.
Because who's going to follow a bunch of teenagers?
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, yeah. I've nothing against teenagers.
I'm sure there's a ton of them watching
Yeah.
this right now, too.
There is
Now,
no teenager made it this
They're all
far.
offended.
Let me clarify that too. That is a total inference based upon one story in Scripture of paying the temple tax. So that could be completely wrong.
You heard it here.
No, we're going with that.
I'm just putting that out there. Yeah.
You heard it here
So-
first.
Yeah.
Where was I at in the story? We'd be better off getting back to that.
Yes, we would.
So, Jesus said to them, "Don't be afraid. From now on, you will fish for people." So let's talk about a theme there. Yeah, Fred.
Uh, did he say that to everybody or to one? Because that's one of the questions I was going to ask today, because I read this passage before I came in. And I'm like, the version I'm reading, the NIV, says, "Then Jesus said to Simon,
Mm-hmm.
don't be afraid." Why did he address that to Simon? I don't have the answer. I've got the question. So.
Well, in this room, you can't ask a question without having the answer.
Make one up. Well, I think it's because of that dialogue that Simon has had previously, verses 8 and 9, where he's fallen at his feet, called him Lord, confessed to him that he's a weak man, a sinful man. You know, so Jesus is calling him to partnership, to be a valuable part of the ministry and the kingdom. And Simon is caught at, "You're the Lord, I'm a sinner." You know, and so in essence, there Jesus is partially restoring him right at that moment. Like you're, it's okay. I know you're a sinner, but I'm calling you anyway to be a servant in my kingdom.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a valuable thing in this. We talked about it when we talked about the Mount of Precipice and them wanting to push Jesus off, and he walks through the crowd, and a part of that, you know, it's not his time. We talked about that when he heals someone and he does a miracle and he says, "Hey, don't tell anybody this," because it wasn't his time. A part of the element of it not being his time is that he doesn't have a sustainable group yet to pass this along to. And so this story, this transition point in Luke, is the transition from an intro to Jesus as the Son of God, a miracle worker and a powerful teacher, to Jesus, the team builder. And I think when we study from here forward, we see that everything he does is about accumulating a team of people that he can pass the message to, that they can disseminate it out. And so you begin to see a change in what he does as well. He begins to complain. You know, you just want miracles. Well, I'm not here just to do a show or to provide you some gimmicky trick thing. I'm here to train and lead and prepare. And he's heading for the cross. You know, and so he wants a sustainable team to be present, which is us. You know, same thing today.
Disciples who make disciples.
So, Ben, you're teaching this weekend.
Yeah.
Did we write your sermon for you?
Yeah. I'm just going to go back and watch this beforehand and regurgitate that. No, I one of the things that I really want to kind of tie in with all of this story is the idea of disciple making. But you know, we're in a weird time in church as far as services and the building. It's just a weird time in our culture right now. And so what I want to do, without giving away too much of the sermon, I want to kind of bridge the gap between this idea of Jesus calling Simon and the others to be disciples into what he's calling us to today. And I think we are in a very golden opportunity in the life of the church. And you know, I get that we're ready to have services again. We wish things were back to normal. But in the middle of that, this is a golden opportunity for us to realize that we are capable. Throughout this time, we have realized that moms and dads are capable of leading their kids in worship. We have realized that, hey, maybe I do need to be part of a community of believers. Maybe I am more of a people person than I thought I was before all of this. So I think I want to bridge the gap in reminding us and challenging us that, okay, just because someday in the future we're going to be able to get back together and maybe feel a little bit more normal, does not mean that the responsibility of disciple making, the responsibility of leading your families or the people around you is going to shift back to the church staff, if you will. Not that we don't have a part to play in that, but at the same time, understanding that we are all called to be disciples who make disciples. So trying to play off of that is really where I want to go, because, listen, people are frustrated. People are, wherever your emotions lie, they're all over the map right now, and understandably so. But I just want to remind us that this is a really, really cool opportunity in the life of the church that is going to have such an amazing impact if we will press in and be disciples who make disciples through all of this.
That really is the key to the effectiveness of the church for the next generation.
Yeah.
Because if we're not making disciples, they're not just showing up at church anymore.
Yep.
You know.
Yep.
So that's the emphasis of Jesus. That's what we're going to keep pushing for as a church as well. So good stuff.